Hey peeps, what's up? Manchi here, back with another video. And if you've just gotten your hands on a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max or the iPhone 15 Pro and you are into awesome camera photography, well, you might be looking for the best camera settings for your 15 Pro or the 15 Pro Max. You do have a bunch of options which you can enable or disable. What are the toggles you should enable? What are the toggles you should disable? What is the best combination? What does each toggle do? Well, that is what we are going to cover in this video. So without any further delay, let us get down to business. First things first, where do you find the settings for camera? Well, you need to go into settings on your iPhone, and on the main page, you need to scroll down right below the photos option. You will see the option of camera. Once we go inside here, you can customize the settings for the camera. Let us go into the first option, which is record video. So on top you have a bunch of options. Now the one which is check marked is the default mode or the default video recording option. So if I go into the video right now in the camera, on the top right you see HD and 60. So by default it is going to record in HD and 60. However, if I tap on HD and it will switch to 4K. Then if I tap on 4K, it will switch to HD. Similarly, if you tap on the number, you can switch between the FPS. So whatever you see over here and the one which is checked is your default mode. Of course, on the bottom, it does tell you that, hey, 720p at 30 FPS is like space saver, will take around 60 MB for a minute of video. And then you have the numbers for 4K 30, 4K 60, 4K 24. And of course, a pro tip over here would be if you want to record in Hollywood style, how they shoot in the films, then you have to use 4K 24 FPS. So herein, I personally keep it at 1080p 60 because that is what works best for me. Next up, you have the option of show PAL formats. Now do note that PAL is a television format which is used in many countries in Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America. Once we enable this toggle, you will see 25 FPS options appear on the top. So here it is 1080p at 25 FPS and then 4K at 25 FPS. Why do you need this? Well, in these certain countries, the light is at 50 hertz frequency. So you get black lines when you're recording videos. If you are in that situation, enable this show PAL formats and try recording your videos at 25 FPS and see if that fixes your issue. The next option we have is called enhanced stabilization. Once you enable the toggle for enhanced stabilization, your videos and cinematic mode will stabilize the videos by zooming in slightly. So if you are recording videos using your hand, there will always be some shakiness and some motion. That is when you should enable enhanced stabilization. However, if you're mostly recording videos using a tripod, then you can feel free to disable the toggle for enhanced stabilization. Our next options in the main settings for the camera are record slow motion and record cinematic. So again, these are the default, the ones which are checked are the default resolutions in which slow motion and cinematic will be recorded. However, you can always change them. So let us go into cinematic and you will notice on the top right, we get the default which is HD and 30. If I tap on it, I can of course change it. And before you ask me, hey Manchi, what is this f-stop and what does it do? Well, once you select it, you can choose your depth effect using the slider at the bottom. Next up, we have formats. So let us go into formats. Camera capture. Do you want it high efficiency or do you want it most compatible? The simplest explanation is if you are in Apple's walled garden, you have iPad, MacBook, Apple Watch, and you do not do any editing on the pictures, you just keep them, share them amongst your devices, then you should use Apple's high efficiency format. And the other one is most compatible. If you're like me, you have say Windows, you have Android phones, you have iPhones, then I would recommend you use most compatible because most compatible will save your pictures in JPEG and videos in H.264 4. There are a few limitations over here though. So cinematic video 4K at 60, 1080p at 240 fps and HDR video require high efficiencies. Next up we have photo mode. So with the iPhone 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, you can actually capture pictures in either 12 or in 24 megapixels. Out of the box, 24 megapixels is selected, but this can be confusing as well, right? When do you use 12 and when do you do 24? So my personal recommendation is, if it is a low light scene, then I would use 12 megapixels. If there is enough light, bright outdoor situation, I would use 24 megapixels so that I get more details in my pictures. And again, as with everything Apple, you do have some limitations over here as well. So photos on the main camera at 1x can be saved at 12 or 24 megapixel. Photos taken with night mode, macro, flash, or portrait lighting will be saved at 12 megapixels. So there it is. For your night mode, they are switching to 12 megapixels because it is a low light situation. Then you have Pro RAW and resolution control. So once I enable this, I can now choose my Pro mode default. So do you want a JPEG of up to 48 megapixels? Do you want Pro RAW of 12 megapixels? Or do you want Pro RAW Max up to 48 megapixel? And the camera control will toggle the Pro format on and off. Long press on the camera control to choose from other format options. So let us go into the camera section, and then on the top right we have RAW Max, and it was disabled. We did enable it, but if I long press on it, I can now choose JPEG Max, RAW 12 or RAW Max, which is up to 48 megapixels. Now do note that there are some limitations which are mentioned over here, and ProRAW is like 10-bit file that uses linear DNG format to retain more information and dynamic range. So if you are taking great pictures, you're a professional photographer, you want to edit those pictures later on, that is when I would go into the ProRAW 10-bit linear DNG situation. Otherwise, me personally, I just keep this toggle as disabled. Then we have similar options for Apple ProRes, and let us go into that option. Once you enable it, ProRes encoding, you can choose between HDR, SDR, and log. Now, if you're using log, then you have to be like a pro video recorder because you will have to edit the video in post. A log video is going to be like, if you look at it, it's going to be very bland, but it has all the details. So you do need post editing to bring out the colors. You have to do the video grading and all those awesome great things which the professionals do. I personally leave this as disabled. And while we're talking about pro modes, a pro tip over here is that with the iPhone 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, you have a Type-C port at the bottom. So you can actually connect your flash drive or your SD card directly to the Type-C port if you're recording in Pro mode. And then let us go into the camera, let us go into video. Let me enable Pro on the top left, and there it is. You can see it is right now giving me a message about unsupported file system because my external storage device needs to be either exFAT or APFS to support external recording. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you can record directly to a flash drive in Pro mode on your 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. The next option we have in your camera settings is preserve settings, and you have toggles for a bunch of different options over here. A first example is camera mode. Let us say you record a lot of videos and you are frustrated by the fact that every time you open the camera, it is in photo and you have to switch over to video. Well, all you have to do is enable the toggle for camera mode, and then once you switch to video, every time you open your camera application, it is going to open in video mode, thereby preserving the setting. And you can do it for a bunch of options like creative controls, depth control, macro control, live photo, action mode. Next up we have record stereo sound, and I personally see no reason why you would not want to record stereo sound when you are recording videos on your iPhone 15 Pro or the iPhone 15 Pro Max, so I leave it as enabled. Then you have use volume up for burst. So let us say I go into photo mode right now and I press volume up. Let us see what happens. So you see it started recording a video, and as soon as I let go of the volume button, the video stopped recording. However, if you want to take burst pictures with volume up, once we enable this toggle and I go back into the photo mode and I press and hold volume up, you will see, bam, here it is. I just took a bunch of burst shots by using the volume up button on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. The next two options on our list are scan QR code. So this is pretty self-explanatory. You point your camera at a QR code, it is going to scan it if this toggle is enabled, and then you can either go to a website, do your Apple Pay and stuff. So that is what you can do with the scan QR codes toggle enabled. Then you also have show detected text. Again, point your camera to a text, and then on the bottom right of your viewfinder, you'll see an option appear. You select that option, you can go to the link, you can copy and paste text, all that AI features which everybody is bragging about these days. Our next two options are about a grid and a level. So let me open my viewfinder, and right now I have no grid over here. So let us say you want to take a picture and you want to make sure that the subject is at the center of your frame. That is where the grid comes handy, and once I enable it, bam, here it is. You can see I now have a grid of lines in my view finder. Similarly, the level is like an awesome feature which they added to the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. Once you enable this, it will tell you if your phone is straight or not, and once it is straight, you will feel a subtle vibration and the line will also turn yellow and eventually disappear. But if your phone is not straight, then it will keep on moving. So me personally, I keep both of those options of grid and level enabled, along with mirror the front camera, because if this toggle is not enabled and you take a lot of selfies, the right hand appears as the left hand and the left hand appears as the right hand. So enabling the toggle for mirror front camera fixes that frustrating issue. And our next option is view outside the frame. So if this option is enabled, then other than what you're capturing in the viewfinder, you also have these borders which have the options and the controls. With that toggle enabled, these will turn transparent and you will be able to see behind them as well what the camera is seeing. You will only capture what is there in the viewfinder. So this gives you the flexibility of visualizing that, hey, if I move my camera a bit towards the right or the left, I might get a better picture. So me personally, I leave this option of view outside the frame as enabled. Then we have photographic styles. Now, not everybody likes the default style which comes out of the box. That is the standard one wherein tone and warmth are 0. Let us say you want rich contrast, or you want a vibrant style, or you want a warm style with tone as 0 and warmth as an additional 50. So those are all the things which you can configure in photographic styles. Then you have main camera. So let us go into the main camera, and if I tap on 1x, I can switch to 1.2x, tap again, I can switch to 1.5x. So these are your different focal lengths in which you can take pictures. So it is 24 mm, 28 mm, and 35 mm. Let us say you always want to take pictures in 35 mm. So this is your default lens. Now if I go to the camera, by default it is in 1.5x. So that is what you can configure over here. And of course, if you do not want any of those options, you can go ahead and totally disable them. And now if I tap on 1x, nothing happens. We are not switching to the other focal lengths of 28 and 35 because I had them disabled. Our next option over here is action mode lower light. So this is going to decrease the stabilization to optimize for bright scenes. So let us say you are taking a video in action mode and there is not enough light, but you want your video to be bright enough. That is when you would enable this toggle of action mode lower light. Then the next one is HDR, video in high efficiency, and this is to record up to 60 fps video in 10 bit high dynamic range, including Dolby Vision. So that is when you have to enable this. For a normal user, I would recommend keeping this option off. Then you have auto FPS. So this is going to automatically reduce the frame rate to improve low light video and to optimize the file size. Once we go inside this option, you can either choose off 30 or auto 30 and 60 FPS. Now do note the FPS is going to reduce to 24 FPS to improve the low light video. And what this option is doing is, do you want your 30 FPS video to be reduced to 24 FPS, or do you want your 30 and 60 both, or do you want it totally off? And if you ask me what do you do, I personally leave it as auto 30 and 60 FPS. Next up, lock camera. Now you're recording a video and you have on the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max three rear cameras, and if you do not want it to switch between, say, macro mode, then that is when you're going to use this toggle. You are using the wide angle, you want to use the wide angle to keep recording the video, enable this toggle of lock camera, because it is saying that do not automatically switch between camera while recording video. Then my favorite feature, which they've added with the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, is lock white balance. And why is this my favorite option? Well, if you have a scene with high dynamic range, you have the skies, then you have something other which is white, you have some bright flowers, and you're recording a video, you will notice that the white balance adjusts a lot and sometimes it can be irritating. So locking the white balance is going to make sure that your video comes out crazy good. Our next camera setting for the iPhone 15 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max is portraits in photo mode. Now this is something new which they have added this year, and I highly recommend you enable this. This is going to automatically capture depth information if a person, cat, or a dog is prominent in the picture, and then you can add the portrait effect later on. So if you are in the camera application in photo mode, you will see a f-stop icon appear on the bottom left when this mode is kicking in. And a super important pro tip over here would be, if the f-stop option does not appear for you, make sure you tap to focus on the object and then the f-stop option is going to appear. Once you capture that picture and you go into your photos, you open that picture, and if you tap on edit, on the bottom you will see an option which says portrait. This means you can actually convert this picture into a portrait picture and apply the depth and blur effect by using this slider. Bam, here it is. You can see we have successfully applied the portrait effect. Another awesome feature, if you have two objects, you can actually switch the focus between the two objects. So right now, focus is on my friend BB-8 over here. However, what if I want to switch focus to Master Yoda? All I have to do is select Master Yoda and bam, there it is. Master Yoda is in focus and BB-8 is out of focus. The portrait effect is still working like a boss. Next up, we have prioritize faster shooting, and me personally, I always enable this because this is going to intelligently adapt image quality when you are rapidly pressing the shutter. So if you are in a situation wherein you have to take a bunch of pictures at the same time, I do want the shutter speed to be faster. Then we have lens correction, which is to correct lens distortion on the front and ultra wide camera. Pretty self-explanatory, and I do leave this one enabled. And our last option is macro control. So if you take a lot of macro pictures on your iPhone 15 Pro or the iPhone 15 Pro Max, then I do recommend you enable this option, so that if you're moving closer to an object trying to take a macro picture, you will see the icon appear on the bottom left, and then you can decide whether you want to use the macro lens or do you want to use the normal lens. Next up, if you are into astrophotography, there is one setting which is not present in the menu where we were. So for that, you have to go into the camera application, and here it is right now. You can see on the top left, I'm getting 2 seconds. This means that night mode is kicking in, but the exposure time is going to be 2 seconds. However, if I tap on this arrow over here, then Tap on this moon icon one more time on the bottom, the second one from the left, right besides the flash icon. I can actually change the exposure time, and there it is. You can see the max I can do right now is 4 or 5 seconds. But if you are in a super dark environment, and your phone is on a tripod or it is pretty stable, you can actually change the time to a maximum of 30 seconds. So 30 seconds of exposure is going to be super great if you are into astrophotography, you take pictures of the moon, the stars. So this is one hidden setting on the iPhone 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max camera for you astrophotography lovers, which you must know about. And of course, if you're holding the very same iPhone in your hand, the maximum exposure time for night mode you might get with this setting is 10 seconds. And there it is, peeps. That was a detailed explanation of all the camera settings which you have on your iPhone 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max. And by now, you should be able to make a decision as to what are the best camera settings for you, what are the toggles you should enable, what are the toggles you should disable. And of course, if you do have any pro tips for us, please make sure to leave them in the comments on this video.